Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all doing fantastic and that you're all having a wonderful day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. The last 3 weeks have been very weird. If you haven't been here or if you have been paying attention to the news that we've been getting within the cryptocurrency space, something very odd has begun to form. So, historically, within the cryptocurrency space, banks have almost always stayed away from us, or at least this is the story that we've been told. The original idea years ago was that banks would never enter our space and or would only make sure to find ways to talk about us negatively, and it still is kind of a thing more or less. With the creation of XRP, the idea was it's a new age version. I'm going to give you the entire story because I need you to really get what's going on. XRP was created as a new age version of Bitcoin that if banks did not want to deal in Bitcoin, this would be another easier way for them to do so. And instead of working, and I air quote here, against the banks as Bitcoin developers did in the past, keyword past, they would choose to say, hey, we can't get rid of the old system or we can't get rid of it that quickly. So therefore, let's work together to kind of do all of this. A month or so at this point, we've been getting a lot of banking news. And I think that's what kind of lightly caught me off guard because normally we don't. Any kind of banking news that we did get within the space was nearly always something negative, or this bank said something about this, or that bank was talking about Bitcoin on TV, and it's like, you know, you don't really care, but it ends up making the most popular news story of the day. That's why the Jamie Dimon news was constantly there. So where we are now at the time of me making this video, we've been seeing a lot of like banking activity within the space as far as like how many people are banks are and have been accumulating crypto over the course of the last like 6 months or so. If you've been missing a lot of the numbers, we've had the Bank of Montreal, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, I think a couple of large banks in Germany. I think one in Switzerland. What were the other ones? There were, I think, 2 other large banks and like in gigantic investment firms as well. One of them who I believe purchased, I think it was like $180 million or something of that caliber worth of Bitcoin. This news I'm about to tell you made incredibly popular news, but not for the reason that you're going to think. I saw this news, I found in multiple sources just to make sure it wasn't people, you know, like making up stuff. And then I kept on reading and digging deeper, and I was like, I think everyone really missed the entirety of what the actual story is, and here we are right now. Need to preface this by saying, a lot of people who are writing these articles, I don't mean this in a weird way, they talk not normal. I keep seeing a bunch of Is it raining? It's raining. I thought it was just really strong wind. I keep seeing a lot of cryptocurrency articles written in like a the word's not boisterous, but it's like a super inflated, like, because of this miraculous, wonderful thing that we've seen, the cryptocurrency community can now hold hands and rejoice, like that kind of writing. That started about 1.5 years ago with a bunch of Cardano articles about Hoskinson. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to get into it and then I'll explain what's actually going on. Every single article that I found about this information focused solely on Ripple and solely on XRP. but I'm going to show you the actual thing that's going on. It says, in a new development sparking widespread reactions, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, or the BCBS, has released a report from different banks. Yearly, give or take, there were a number, years ago, there were a number of, what do you call them? Not surveys, I guess you could say reports, from governments. That was the main thing that we used to have. And the main question was always, is Bitcoin a threat? Is Bitcoin a problem? Is Bitcoin going to be an issue on the traditional financial system? And I looked back. We had those since around 2014, 2015, until around 2020, 2021. And the answer was always no. No, Bitcoin's not a threat. No, Bitcoin's not big enough. No people aren't using Bitcoin more than fiat currencies. And that's swapped in 2020 and 2021, where the answer actually became yes. Like Bitcoin, if it gets too big, is going to be a problem for the traditional financial system. And that's why a lot of times you do see politicians around the world pushing back. It's not that they don't understand Bitcoin, it's that they do completely understand Bitcoin. And that, once again, the current rate of adoption, if this continues over the course of the next 10 years, we are going to have the majority of the planet into the cryptocurrency space. So of course it ends up being an issue. So the other question then is, who's using it? Who's buying it? Who's actually in this space? We've seen surveys before for like rich institutions. We had some a couple of weeks ago where people were asking family offices. So, these really wealthy wealth management kind of places. They were asking how many of the families who you are currently helping to diversify their portfolio and make them richer, yada, yada. How many of them are actually in crypto? And I think it was something like 75% of these families were into crypto. I think 15% were more conservative in that they chose gold and bonds and other things like that. And then the other percentage left was like people who are looking to get into the space, but they're still lightly timid for whatever the reason might actually be. So the other question then became, from the Bank of International Settlements, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, and I think we had some stuff from the International Monetary Fund, basically the three entities who kind of like control money around the world, was then how many banks are in this space? Because if you remember before, the news that we were getting consistently was that there were no banks in the cryptocurrency space. We were kind of alone. It was just a thing for people who wanted to get into crypto, who liked decentralization. That's why I, might have ranted a couple of videos over the course of the, this year so far, where I was like, it's not us anymore. We know that it's not us. And that was more so when it was just news about the actual Bitcoin ETFs. So the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision released a report. And here we go. It said the report placed XRP among the most popular crypto assets that have attracted investors' interest. Every single article, I found about 12 of them. Then I found the actual link to the link. Then I'll show you the actual report as well. All of them had XRP at the forefront of the discussion of what was actually going on. Someone on Twitter, his name is Jack the Rippler, wow, a XRP advocate and enthusiast, took to Twitter to break the news to his followers. The person wrote to his teaming followers, okay. According to the report, 19 banks from different regions of the world reported a total crypto exposure. So here we go. So remember how we kept on hearing. Now this is the first layer of the gigantic onion that we actually have. You know how we heard for years that banks were not in the space, companies were not in the space, institutions didn't care about it, and we started getting all these numbers, especially the last 3 weeks. We have people who are going through SEC filings and they're finding that these like mega banks are actually into crypto. The 19 banks who they spoke to, and these are large banks. These aren't like, like the bank around the corner from your house that doesn't have a name. Like, but never seen that bank before. That no, like these are major world banks. 19 of these banks have crypto exposure that's valued at about 10.27 billion US dollars. When you talk about the accumulation levels of what you need, first of all, we know that these banks have the assets and the money to be able to do so. But to have done so over the course of 15 years in relative silence is absolutely insane. When I talk about I want people to really pay attention a lot more to what's happening, as opposed to exclusively paying attention to the price, it's this. We are currently living in a world where Bitcoin has taken over. Bitcoin is not a thing that's on the side. It's not something that's said in passing. It's not something that was an idea but didn't really catch on. We're talking about the richest people on the planet are now buying crypto. They're now buying Bitcoin. They're officially in the space. They're finding ways to buy as much as they possibly can without actually influencing the price. That's why whenever we do get this, like I call it like drippy news, like slow drips into a bucket over and over and over of this crazy news. And the majority of the time, that news ends up not even being popular. It doesn't make it onto the news radar. It is not a discussion on Twitter, or it ends up getting misconstrued in some sort of way. The report says that 19 banks currently own $10.27 billion worth of crypto. That alone should be it. That should be the end of the conversation. Like, okay, cool. Got it. We won. This is fantastic. Well, let's see, where the market goes over the next 10 years. The amount of exposure that they have to something that they said that they hate, and always keep this in mind. As a bank, you are, especially a central bank, you are supposed to only stand behind the currency that you are printing. That's just how it's always been. You stand for the integrity and the strength of that dollar, of that euro, of that yen. When you swap out those dollars, those euros, those yen, for something that we see is slowly taking over fiat currency, it has a gigantic form of significance, because it means that even the banks understand that what they're printing, what they're selling to the public, is also not true. When you hear news like this, or when I hear news like this, it kind of opens my mind a little bit more, because remember when we keep getting all those reports, and I mean from relatively wealthy people within the cryptocurrency space, who tell us sometimes, yeah, we're having discussions with this so-and-so, we're talking to these people, yada, not even the BlackRock one, no, like just like in general, like Cathie Wood, Novogratz, et cetera, who are like, yeah, based on current reports that we have from the accumulation levels of the Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin's going to go over $1 million in 6 years. And then you keep hearing those numbers over and over, and you're like, well, Bitcoin's down by 3% per day, so what is she talking about? And then you're like, oh, of course, 19 banks. And these are the ones that they surveyed. These are the larger ones. So this doesn't count the hundreds and thousands of other banks out there who've also been buying and accumulating. You have some type of an exposure to the asset. There are probably certain banks who, and I air quote here, who only have a $500,000, $1.5 million, $3.5 million exposure to Bitcoin. 3.5 million pales in comparison to $10 billion, but it's still a huge amount of exposure when it comes to the idea if Bitcoin was divvied up to everyone on the planet. They're buying up everything right in front of people's faces, and I don't get why the news is never in that direction. It's one thing for us to be in the cryptocurrency market and to see that on the news networks that are out there, like news, with the panel and the people wearing the suits and talking to the microphones, yada yada yada, that they don't talk about it. I get it. Those news networks are owned by wealthy families who are also trying to get people to not pay attention to the fact that they're also buying up crypto. But then you have within the cryptocurrency space, this news should be popular for the entire week. This should be all that we're discussing and talking about. How much exposure they actually have. And this is the exposure that they actually like gave away and told. Because you know that banks have money hidden, and banks have, shell companies inside of shell companies inside of shell companies, and like it continues on. They have money in tons of different ways that also just doesn't actually enter their actual balance sheets. So if you're talking about, this is 19 banks, not even considering the next 800, 900, 1,000 banks on the list of banks around the world who also have exposure to Bitcoin. When you talk about the news is always constantly BlackRock and Fidelity's exposure to Bitcoin, and not even the other 7 companies or the other 15 ETFs that we have around the world or the normal people in the market, the accumulation levels then completely go off the charts. The news in crypto, for some reason, is always very narrow. Is not even the word. Like, what's smaller than narrow? Mega narrow. I don't know. The news is 19 banks are accumulating crypto with exposure to $10 billion, and every single article exclusively spoke about XRP. And when I show you the numbers, you're going to understand why I'm like, why were you just talking about XRP? Because the numbers go far beyond that one coin. The exposure from these 19 banks, it says, with XRP emerging as a prominent investment choice. I don't know why everyone just focused on XRP. It says, for context, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, the BCBS, is a globally recognized banking committee comprising central banks from 28 jurisdictions with 45 different members. The committee is saddled, with the responsibility of assisting national banking and financial market supervisory agencies to attain a more unified approach to tackling regulatory challenges. Some days have you ever seen the movie Zoolander? If you haven't, it's very funny. Go watch it. Not part 2. Part 2 was garbage. If you ever seen part 1, there's a part where Will Ferrell is like talking to someone and he goes, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I feel like that all the time and I feel like that within the art market. I feel that way a lot of times within the real estate market, but nothing perplexes me quite as much as the cryptocurrency space. Nothing. I try to do what I can. I know I'm not a miracle worker. I'm not a crypto whisperer. I do what I can to try and get the news out there. There's no way. There's nothing. There's no scenario on this planet where I think I'm going to stop paying attention to this market. And I dare not even use the word bullish there, because I think I'm far beyond. The idea of bullish for me is like, you don't really get what's going on. You see some numbers on a screen and you're like, yeah, man, bullish. You see the prices go down, you go bearish. No. I think I've ascended all of that. You understand that crypto is here to stay, right? And I mean like to stay. I mentioned that in January, after we got the ETFs, I was like, this is it. This is the moment we waited for to like, and I don't care for the term legitimized because of the legacy system. But the legitimacy around our market has solidified. Like it's hardening. It's getting to the point where it's like a metal core that can't be broken into because we are everywhere. And people who are in this space don't understand that. They completely don't get it. You know the amount of people who are in this market still for the short term. Still. When you talk about Family offices. You know what the job of a family office is? If you get a chance, find a documentary on like wealthy family offices and what they do and the amount of money that they have and their purpose. Their purpose is to make sure that that family's money lasts forever. Now, understand the word forever. It's not like a year. It's not one generation. It's not 5 generations. It is forever. I watched a documentary where they were talking about it. They were talking to these families, and they said the point is that, like, the family typically knows everyone in the office, and at some point the head of the family managing office, when they have a child and the child ends up working for the company as well, they also meet them as well, like as they're doing their internship or whatever it might be for the actual company, so that when the person who runs the company essentially passes on, the family already has a connection to the next generation of the family office. They invest the money to make sure that this money goes on for generations and generations and generations. That's their entire purpose. It's not to get into risky assets. It's not to get into things that, they'll hold for a year and then let go. This money that they accumulate is for the family forever. They make sure that these families will be wealthy in 1,500 years. This is literally the goal of them and the point of diversification. When you talk about family offices, we've heard from BlackRock. They're in deep discussions with multiple huge family offices around the world who want to buy an egregious amount of Bitcoin. That doesn't make popular news. When we hear that pension fund, you know what the point of a pension fund is? It's so that people have money for their pension when they retire. People should start investing for retirement as early as possible, ideally starting in their 20s. But a lot of people really don't start until their 40s or their 50s. It's sad, but it ends up being the situation. So what ends up happening is these pension funds and all these pension offices and retirement funds, they make sure that they're buying assets that they see longevity in, that will get them the best returns to give the best amount of money to the people who are choosing to invest with them. They're not buying up Bitcoin to go, okay, when I buy 4%, sell it. No, they're buying as a long-term hold because that's where the big money is. If we're talking about in 5.5 years, and I say the word even if we just have a $500,000 Bitcoin, that's a gigantic return that other investments cannot do. And I say 500,000 because it's, everyone's talking about a $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. For those of you who've missed the numbers, by 2035 to 2040, it's a $10 million plus Bitcoin. But, I'm not going to jump that far in the future. Let's try and talk about the generalized now. When you hear that pension funds are buying up Bitcoin, doesn't make popular news. We heard from BlackRock. We heard the news from BlackRock that they're in discussions with multiple countries who want to buy Bitcoin. We hear from BlackRock that they're working with governments and the government sovereign funds to accumulate as much Bitcoin as these countries possibly can without moving the prices. That news not only does it not make news on CNBC, ABC, all these other channels, it doesn't even make popular news in the cryptocurrency space. The lack of attention to what's taking, it is mind-boggling. When I say taking crazy pills, I feel like sometimes I literally am just talking into a microphone. And I know that, and I get it. I keep seeing people who keep saying, I'm paying attention, TMI. I know. But for the other 95% out there, when Bitcoin goes to $100,000, I think there's going to be a gigantic reckoning of FOMO that's going to take place. We know, stop, listen. You know that after all the news that we've been getting, all the accumulation news, me ramping up my ranting in the last 2 years. Bitcoin goes to $16,000 and I'm like, this is it. Now's the time to get into the market. We've seen over 2 years that Bitcoin has just about more or less tripled in price. You know that after having Bitcoin continues going up in price, you know that Bitcoin is going to $100,000. What's stopping you from getting more into the market? That is a legitimate question. The extra money that's to be made now and also in the future. How do people lose faith so quickly within this market? How is it possible? You just heard they work with central banks. 19 of them. Oh, I'll even show you the report because some of the banks declined to answer. You know what happens when you decline to answer? That means you have a lot to hide. 19 banks that they spoke to said that they have $10 billion worth of crypto. What more do you need? What extra do you need on your plate to be like, cool, got it, hyper bullish every single day? When I kept on looking around and I found the actual tweet right here, even the Binance newsletter thing also reported, it says 19 banks report exposure to XRP and $10.27 billion in investment positions. Cool. It's not that XRP is, oh yeah, amazing, wow, awesome, cool, fantastic. I don't know why everyone kept on focusing on those 3 letters over and over. Here's the actual thing right here. It's a 6-page PDF. I'll have it listed in the description below for those of you who want to read or like peruse through it. I think it's on the 3rd page and I saw it. Yeah, there we go. For those of you not looking at the screen, it says reported crypto asset exposures are comprised of Bitcoin and Ether. Bitcoin and Ethereum are the top holdings of these banks. They hold in their portfolios, it's 31% Bitcoin and 22% Ether. Together, they make up almost 90% of reported exposures, focusing on the top 20 reported crypto assets by exposure. XRP only made up 2%. And I'm going to back it up there. When I say only 2%, 2% is a gigantic amount. And the fact that they even chose XRP is also like, cool, golf clap. But it's 2% of the number. So it's cool that they're in the numbers. For those of you who aren't looking at the screen, of the 100% of crypto assets held by these banks, XRP is 2%, Cardano is 1%, Solana is 1%, Litecoin is 0.4%, and Stellar Lumens, which is crazy. Stellar Lumens doesn't even make any sense in my mind. Stellar Lumens is 0.4% and Polkadot is 2%. The news, and I say this, lightly, should have been banks have over 10, a few banks that decided to respond to a survey reported that they hold over $10 billion worth of crypto. 50% of that is Bitcoin and Ether. And they also hold altcoins. That would have made a spectacular title. But everyone just focused on XRP. I cannot for the life of me actually figure out how. Here's an even better chart. It's Bitcoin, Ether, Polkadot, XRP, Cardano, undisclosed. Okay. Solana, Litecoin, Lumens, and Binance Coin is at the bottom of the list. I have nothing but questions when it comes to a lot of this. For the sake of not having to ramble any longer, as it were, this news is huge, and it happens all the time because I've seen smart Alex in my comment section writing that I'm always writing. Everything is huge news. It can't all be major news. Stop over exaggerating. Do you understand what's happening? We are witnessing the collapse of fiat currencies. It is mind-boggling that your mind could be focused on anything else right now. I mean, anything else. The US dollar, the world reserve currency, the currency that the world runs on, has lost 99.9% of its value to Bitcoin in 10 years. The world reserve currency. We have news maybe 3 times a week about the other fiat currencies that are also currently collapsing. We just had news, I think it was the Japanese yen. I think it lost 34% of its value in the last year or two, or it's something along the, like it's, when you hear, if you had heard that banks had a 0% allocation to Bitcoin, to Ether, to XRP, to Cardano, I would go, cool. It makes sense. They're doing everything that they can to make sure that they're pushing all that extra money into uplifting their local currencies. You hear that they went, oh crap, there's a problem. And they allocated $10 billion into crypto, and it doesn't make popular news once again. What is going on? What is happening? Yeah. There's a lot more that I want to say, but it's basically more of, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm not getting it. I'm not fully understanding. There must be some kind of doubt that's left. Some kind of a question. Because remember before, I used to always say, I was like, it's clear that these banks, these companies, these institutions are buying. But when we didn't have exact news, it left, well, clearly it's not happening because Bitcoin went down to 16,000. And I was like, no, like that's by design. They're doing it to make sure that you think that they're not in it so that they can buy up more. And this has been the cycle constantly. Prices go down, they flush you out of the market because you lose faith. You go, well, I have some crypto. I guess I'll sell it and go buy a TV. I've seen it before. It drives me crazy. I've known people who invested in the market years ago, and I ask them, have you seen the markets? And they go, no, I haven't been looking. And I'm like, why haven't you been looking? They sold their crypto. They went on a vacation. They bought shoes. They put a down payment on a car. And I'm like, what? But what I think it actually is when I bring it up to them, like I think I can see the hurt on their face because they realize what they've done. They got into the market assuming, like many others, that Bitcoin was going to $89 million overnight. They were going to be able to buy a jet and show all their friends how cool they are and how much. And then when it takes longer, when they realize it takes a while to build up wealth, people get discouraged. So that's all that I can kind of put together in my mind. We've constantly been sold this idea of instant riches for as long as we've been around, when you realize real wealth, good money, strong money takes a while to build. It's kind of like people who got into the market years ago, 27. So don't ever forget this kind of thing. The numbers that we had, and I mean even more so if we can, ironically, just focus on XRP. The idea of years ago, if you had thrown $1,000 into XRP by the end of 2017, I think for every 1,000 you would have had $200,000 or $300,000. That money would have continued growing in other assets. It's all long term. I can't stress it enough. It's just, I can't and won't tell you what to do with your money, but you can't. It's impossible. If Bitcoin fell down by 10% after I made this video, 15%, no part of me would go, oh no, how terrible. I am so scared now. We know that they're here. We know that they're buying. And the only real catalyst for real change is going to be FOMO from other people. It's going to be people who stopped watching my videos, who left the market a couple of weeks ago, who lost interest because prices went down by a little bit. When Bitcoin goes back above 100,000, that's the only thing that's going to catch them. And then the issue is, here's one. When we go to $200,000 per Bitcoin and we dip back down to 176,000, these people will once again leave the market. And the rich people, the banks, they'll go, Bitcoin was just 200K. It's $25,000 on sale. Let's buy up as much as we can. The price goes back up. These people who had crypto once again lost out because the richest people on the planet are buying all of it. It's a loop. It keeps happening over and over and over. There is no way. It is impossible to be bearish or have negative sentiments about the market. It is literally impossible. I hope in some sort of way that you've all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, supporting, being here through all these years. Oh boy. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.